Okay, good morning. Good day to all. So we are now in our third week of our discussion in Practical Research 2. Okay, so last meeting we discussed about the strengths and weaknesses of quantitative research. Okay, you know what is a strength and its weaknesses. Okay, so I hope you have uh, understood already the concept behind it, especially in the weaknesses. Okay, let's go to our competency. So the learner describe the kinds of quantitative research. So after knowing its strengths and weaknesses, so we'll now determine what kind of quantitative research you are going to use in your research. I know you are very excited already in your research. Okay, so I hope you have that enthusiasm already in conducting your study. Okay, because of our situation now, because of the pandemic, so we will not be conducting our study. So we just use a data from the UNESCO. So from that we'll have your research. Okay, so to avoid the exposure to the virus outside. Okay, so let's proceed. So our objective for this module is to describe the kinds of quantitative research. Okay, then so let's have this. So answer this exercise. Find the 5 words in the box that is related to quantitative research, then encircle them all. Okay, so I hope you find all of this. So again, submit your output to my Gmail account as you see on the screen. Okay, let's have guide questions. So after finding the words you encircled on the maze, so let's have this written here. Then how are these words related to research? Okay, you answer these questions. Okay, so let's proceed to the kinds of quantitative research. Okay, so there are two major categories of the kinds of quantitative research. First, we have this non-experimental design and the experimental design. So commonly we use this non-experimental design because it's much simple to use compared to experimental. Okay, so the difference between the two. So first is non-experimental is more practical to us because we are beginners, so we just use this. Okay, while the experimental it takes a lot of time before you can finish your study. Okay, so what we will still discuss this, what do you mean by this experimental. Okay, so let's have number 1, non-experimental research design. Embody a group of techniques used to conduct quantitative research where there is no manipulation done to any variable in the study. Okay, take note of this, no manipulation. So in other words, variables are measured as they occur naturally without interference of any kind by the researcher. Okay, so again, no manipulation, it occurs naturally. So without the interference of the researcher. So this lack of manipulation may exist because the variable was naturally manipulated before the study began, or because it is not possible or feasible for the researcher to manipulate a particular variable. Okay, so the 3 common types of non-experimental research design. So we have the descriptive, comparative, and correlational. Okay, so what is descriptive? From the word describe. So the purpose of descriptive studies is to describe and interpret the current status of individual settings, conditions, or events. Okay, so example, you're going to study the conditions of the comfort rooms in Maan National High School. So you will use descriptive design. Okay, so So what will you find out in this research? So you didn't manipulate the setting because it's already there. Okay, so you just present what's there. It is clean or it's complete. Comfort rooms, are they functioning or not? So you just describe the scenario. Okay, that is descriptive. Okay, so descriptive research design is appropriate to answer the following research question. Example, what is the level of COVID-19 knowledge of senior high school students in Mondano National High School? And what is the extent of satisfaction of students in the CQN National High School in terms of facilities and instructions? Okay, so I want you to look at these two questions here. So this is an example of the research questions in quantitative research. Okay, so it talks about the level and the extent. Okay, as you observe, so this is the common patterns of stating the research question in quantitative research. Okay, so as you observe, level meaning you're trying to measure the knowledge. So that is quantitative research approach. Then let's have this comparative research. Okay, it involves comparing and contrasting two or more groups. The study subjects based on a particular dependent variable. Specifically, it compares two or more distinct groups on the basis of selected attributes such as knowledge level. Okay, so as you observe, again, comparative meaning you're going to compare sample two groups, sample section A and section B. Okay, so you're going to it depends upon your study, you're going to measure the IQ level of the two sections. So you will use comparative research design. Okay, so example, is there a significant difference in the level of COVID-19 awareness between grades 11 and grade 12? So as you observe, you are comparing the level of awareness of grades 11 and grade 12. Then is there a significant difference in the Microsoft Office competence of the students when grouped according to academic strand, STEM, UM, CBM, and GAS? Okay, so as you observe in these questions here, so it talks about significant difference. Okay, I think you encountered this already in your statistics and probability. Okay, so when I talk about difference, you're going to measure. So I think you're familiar with the t-test. Okay, so that is the statistical tool that you're going to use in these questions to answer your study. Okay, so I hope you review your statistics and probability, especially this t-test. Okay, and let's have this C, correlational. The purpose of correlational studies is to discover and then possibly measure relationship in two or more variables. So take note, correlational, going to establish if there's a relationship between two or more variables. Like example, if there's a relationship between number of hours spending in watching TV and your power consumption. Okay, so I think you already have that topic in your grade 9. I think in how do you call the topic about your variations. I think you remember the topic in grade 9. Okay, so it's the same concept here. One quantity increases, what will happen to the other? It will increase or decrease. That is the concept of correlational. Okay, so correlational research in education seeks out traits, abilities, or conditions that vary or correlate with each other. So correlational research is appropriate to answer the following research questions. Is there a significant relationship between hours of study and academic performance of senior high school students? Okay, so as you observe, so correlational, look at this, how we frame this question here. So it talks about significant relationship. So take note of this line here. So when you have correlational research design, you're going to test its relationship. Okay, unlike in comparative, as you observe, comparative, this talks about a difference. Okay, I hope you're clear with that. Okay, So in correlational research design, so the researcher will use the tool. I think you're familiar with Pearson R. I think your teacher discussed that already in your class in statistics and probability. So we'll test the relationship of the two variables, sample the number of hours studying and the academic performance. Okay, so don't worry about the computations because we will use statistical tools like JAS software. So I think so you can download it in Google. It's free and it's easy to use. Okay, so just download it on your computer so that you can explore it already before we will go to our topic in data analysis. Okay, so take note also. However, it should be cautiously remembered that correlation does not mean causation. I hope you are clear with this line here. So correlation does not mean causation. So take note of this symbol. It should be noted that a study is not permitted to conclude simply because the two variables are related. So example, hours of study and academic performance. Even if the result is positive, it would be completely inaccurate to conclude that studying for a longer period of time will cause improved test performance. Take note of that. Okay, so take note. So correlation does not mean causation. Okay, then I hope that you understand this example here, so it's very clear. Okay, so there could certainly be numerous other variables that might influence higher test scores, such as the quality time spent studying and the level of conceptual understanding of the material being tested. Okay, so I hope you're clear with the example. So it does not mean that the longer you study, meaning the higher your grade. So you might result to burn out because you study for a long period of time. So that's not help anymore in your grade because you did not sleep well. Okay, so that is the meaning here. That correlation does not mean causation. Okay, you just need to establish just the relationship, but it does not mean that that is the cause of that situation. Okay, I hope we are clear with that. Number 2, experimental research designs. So when I talk about experimental research design, it is not the same with in the field of medicine, in which we need to have a experiment with laboratory example, and we will have something like giving medicines to people, etc. So in experimental research design in the field of education, it's a group of techniques where researcher establishes different treatments or conditions and then studies their effects on the participants. It is because of this ability to manipulate the treatment conditions and control for many extraneous factors that experimental studies are the most conclusive of all research design. Okay, so as you have read in this module, so experimental research design involves manipulating the conditions. Like for example, if you're going to have a class, so one class you will have it, will divide it into two, so the other group will receive the treatment. Like example, they will have a computer, they can use computer during their class, while the other class will not have that computer. So that is so you will try to determine if there would be different. So that is an example of experimental research design. Okay, so the two common types of experimental research design. So this is true experimental and quasi-experimental research design. So let's discuss what is true experimental. Experimental research design share one important characteristic in common. They involve the random assignment of the participants to treatment conditions Then random assignment is one of the most powerful techniques for controlling for extraneous threats to validity. Furthermore, samples are randomly selected before they are randomly assigned. So as you observe, so it involves random sampling. So you're going to select random participants, then after that you're going to select randomly in which participants will you give the treatment. So we have here this diagram in strategic intervention material or SIM model. Let's look at this diagram. This is an example of a true experimental research design. This is the illustration. Okay, so we have here sections A to E. So after that we select randomly two sections in this part. So from 5 sections, select 2 sections only. So we selected section B and section D. Then after that we have this random assignment. Okay, so we assign example in section B or section D who will receive this SIM module. Okay, so in this case we selected section D. As you observe, this is the experimental group, while this is all on the control group. Okay, so the difference of the two, so experimental receives the treatment while the control group does not receive any treatment. Okay, so this is the true experimental design. Take note, we have this random selection, and after we select the participants randomly, we give them the random assignment, so we of who will receive the treatment. Okay, that is true experimental. Okay, let's proceed to quasi-experimental. So it comes close to true experiments. However, there is still no random assignment of the participants to groups, which weakens the ability to control for extraneous influences. Okay, this is the illustration. So to illustrate, we have again the same diagram. So we have sections A to E. So we select as the process in true experimental. So random selection of participants, sample section B and section D. Then, so you observe in this part, so we have no random assignment of the treatment. Okay, so that is the difference among the two between true true experimental and quasi-experimental. Okay, so here we just choose already who will receive the treatment. So example, we choose section D already. Okay, so do you get the difference among the two? So in quasi, it has random selection, but it has no random assignment of the treatment of your participants. Okay, that is quasi-experimental. Okay, so let's do this. So I want you to answer this. So describe the following kinds of quantitative research in your own words. Okay, so just write your answer. You type this. You just copy this table in the Microsoft Word. Then I can email this to the link that I will post on the screen. So make sure you write your name and module number in the file name of the Microsoft Word. Okay, email it to my email account. So this is the rubric for grading. So we have this criteria: content, so excellent, ideas clearly reflect the description of the kind of quantitative research. Okay, that is for 3 points. Then let's remember this. So there are two major classifications of quantitative research: experimental and non-experimental. Again, so non-experimental research design embodies a group of techniques used to conduct quantitative research where there is no manipulation done to any variable in the study. That is non-experimental. And 3 common types of non-experimental research design includes descriptive, comparative, and correlational. Okay, So mostly these three types will use this in our research. Okay, then letter B, experimental research design involves treatments of participants. So we give the treatment and studies their effects. Okay, then so the two classification, we have true experimental, so take note. So it involved random selection and random assignment, while quasi-experimental only involves random selection. Okay, I hope you get the difference again. Okay, let's test ourselves. So you answer these uh, exercises. Okay, so identify the quantitative research in the following scenarios. Okay, so I think this is only 1 to 5. Okay, so 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 I will just also have this in the Facebook group natin sa PR2. So you can just answer there in our Facebook group. Okay, so I hope you already joined in our Facebook group. So I will have this written in the Facebook group so you can answer this quiz. Okay, so if you have more questions, you just PM me in the Facebook. Okay, so thank you and God bless.